The millionaire's voice was cold and firm when he said the words that stunned everyone in the room. "You're fired. Leave immediately." The nanny froze. The two little girls standing beside her looked confused, their tiny hands gripping her dress tightly. For years, she had been more than just a nanny to them. She had been their protector, their teacher, their comfort when their father was too busy building his empire. But today, without explanation, the millionaire dismissed her as if she meant nothing. The nanny quietly packed her small bag and walked toward the door, trying to hide the tears forming in her eyes. What the millionaire didn't expect was what would happen next. Because just hours later, his daughters would do something that would shake his entire world, and reveal a truth he never imagined. And by the end of that night, the men who believed money could solve everything would learn a lesson about love, loyalty, and gratitude that would change his life forever. Stay with this story, because what those two little girls did after their nanny left will leave you speechless. David Harrington was known as one of the most successful businessmen in the city. His towering office building dominated the skyline, and his name appeared regularly in business magazines and newspapers. People admired his intelligence, his ambition, and the fortune he had built from nothing. But inside his luxurious mansion, David's life was far from perfect. 5 years earlier, his wife Emily had passed away after a sudden illness, leaving him alone to raise their two daughters, 8-year-old Sophie and 6-year-old Lily. David loved his daughters deeply, but running a billion-dollar company left him with little time to spend with them. Meetings, business trips, and endless responsibilities filled his schedule. That was when Maria entered their lives. Maria Alvarez had been hired as a nanny shortly after Emily's passing. She was kind, patient, and incredibly devoted to the two girls. What started as a job quickly became something much deeper. Maria became their comfort during lonely nights, their teacher during homework struggles, and their biggest supporter at school events when their father couldn't attend. She read them bedtime stories every night. She cooked their favorite meals. She wiped away their tears when they missed their mother. To Sophie and Lily, Maria wasn't just a nanny. She was family. Over the years, David grew used to her presence. He trusted her completely, though he rarely expressed gratitude. In his mind, she was simply doing the job he paid her to do. But one evening changed everything. It began when David returned home early from work, something that rarely happened. As he walked through the hallway, he overheard Maria speaking on the phone in the kitchen. Her voice sounded worried. "I promise I'll figure something out," she whispered. "The girls need stability. I can't leave them now." David paused. Something about the conversation made him uneasy. He stepped closer, listening more carefully. "I know the situation looks bad," Maria continued quietly. "But I would never do anything that could harm them." David's mind immediately jumped to conclusions. Harm them? His heart began racing. Without thinking further, he stormed into the kitchen. "Who are you talking about harming?" he demanded. Maria turned around, startled, nearly dropping the phone. "Mr. Harrington, I—" "Enough," David interrupted coldly. "I heard enough." Maria's face turned pale. "You've been hiding things from me," he said sharply. "I trusted you with my daughters." "Please let me explain," Maria said desperately. But David had already made up his mind. "You're fired," he said firmly. "Pack your things and leave immediately." The kitchen fell silent. Tears filled Maria's eyes, but she nodded slowly. Sophie and Lily had been playing in the living room when they heard the voices. They ran into the kitchen just in time to see Maria wiping her tears. "Maria?" Sophie asked softly. Maria knelt down and hugged both girls tightly. "I'm so proud of you," she whispered. "Remember everything I taught you." "Why are you leaving?" Lily cried. Maria glanced briefly at David, who stood silently near the doorway. "Sometimes adults make decisions we can't change," she said gently. Within minutes, Maria packed her small suitcase and walked out of the mansion. The door closed quietly behind her. David believed he had protected his daughters. But he had no idea that he had just made the biggest mistake of his life. Because that night, his daughters would reveal something that would change everything. That evening, the mansion felt strangely empty. Dinner sat untouched on the table as Sophie and Lily stared silently at their plates. David noticed their sadness but assumed they would eventually adjust. "Girls," he said gently, "I know you're upset, but this was necessary." Neither of them responded. Finally, Sophie looked up. "You didn't even listen to her," she said quietly. David frowned. "I heard enough." "No," Lily said softly. "You didn't." David sighed, already exhausted from the long day. "Girls, Maria was hiding something important from us." Sophie exchanged a glance with her younger sister. Then she stood up. "There's something you should know." David raised an eyebrow. "What is it?" Sophie walked toward the hallway and returned holding a small envelope. She placed it on the table. "What's this?" David asked. "Maria told us to give it to you if something like this ever happened." David slowly opened the envelope. Inside was a collection of medical bills and a letter. His eyes widened as he began reading. The letter explained everything. Maria's younger brother had been seriously ill for months. She had been secretly working extra hours and taking loans to pay for his treatment. The phone conversation David overheard had been with a hospital representative threatening legal action if she couldn't make another payment. Maria hadn't told David because she didn't want him to feel responsible for her personal struggles. But the letter revealed something else that made David's heart stop. 6 months earlier, while David was away on a business trip, a fire had started in the mansion's laundry room late at night. Maria had been the one who smelled the smoke first. Without hesitation, she rushed into the girls' bedroom, carried them outside to safety, and called emergency services. The fire department managed to stop the flames before they spread. David had been told the fire alarm system saved them. But the truth was different. Maria had saved his daughter's lives. As David finished reading the letter, his hands trembled. "Why didn't you tell me this?" he whispered. Sophie looked at him sadly. "Maria said you were always too busy." A wave of guilt crashed over him. For years, Maria had protected, cared for, and loved his daughters as if they were her own. And he had thrown her away without even listening. Suddenly Lily spoke. She didn't even say goodbye properly, because she didn't want us to cry. David stood up immediately. "Where did she go?" The girls shrugged. But Sophie remembered something. She said she might move back to her old apartment near the train station. Within minutes, David grabbed his keys and rushed out of the house. For the first time in years, he wasn't thinking about business deals or meetings. He was thinking about gratitude. About loyalty. About the woman who had protected his daughters when he wasn't there. After nearly an hour of searching, he finally found Maria sitting quietly on a bench near the train station, holding her suitcase. She looked exhausted. When she saw David approaching, she stood up nervously. "Mr. Harrington, I'm sorry," David said immediately. Maria froze. "I should have listened to you," he continued. "I judged you without knowing the truth." Maria remained silent. "My daughters told me everything," he said softly. "And I read your letter." Tears filled Maria's eyes. "You saved my daughters' lives," David said. "And I treated you like a stranger." For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then David said something he had never said before. "Please come home." Maria hesitated. But this time, David added, "Not as an employee, but as part of our family." When they returned to the mansion later that night, Sophie and Lily ran toward Maria and hugged her tightly. The house that once felt empty suddenly felt alive again. From that day forward, David made a promise to himself. Success meant nothing if you forgot the people who stood beside you during your hardest moments. And sometimes, the greatest lessons in life come from the smallest voices. Like two little girls who refused to let kindness be forgotten. Because true wealth isn't measured by money. It's measured by the love, loyalty, and gratitude we show to the people who change our lives.